Is Meghan and Harry's Netflix deal worth the paper it's printed on? Will the king have to think again about Prince Andrew after painful poll numbers? Why is Camilla now caught in a yachting controversy? And what moves Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, to tears this week? We have another great show for you today. Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential. I'm Jo Elvin, and back with me today is the Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English, and the paper's diary editor, Richard Eden. Welcome both. Now, we have 475,000 lovely subscribers. Why don't you join them and help us get over that 500,000 mark? Go on. Now, I don't want to teach you to suck eggs, but some of you, I think, may think you subscribe, but you actually haven't pressed that button. So go on and check today and never miss another episode. Subscribers also get notified about special episodes like the one we put out earlier this week where Robert Hardman looks at the life of Princess Anne, who turns 75 this week. And if you missed that, that will play straight after this. A reminder also that if you want the latest royal news, you should sign up to our fantastic Palace Confidential newsletter. You can scan the QR code on your screen right now with your phone, or click the link in the description below to hear more from Richard, Rebecca, and the rest of our amazing royal experts. And did I mention it's free, so you've got nothing to lose there. Now let's get to it. If you saw our interview with Andrew Loney last week, you'll know that there was a huge amount of controversy over the revelations from his biography of Prince Andrew. But a lot of people want to know, how have his daughters Beatrice and Eugenie reacted to it all? Now, Richard, your colleague Sarah Rainey wrote a very moving piece about the impact that these revelations have had on Beatrice and Eugenie. According to people close to the princesses, what did you make of it?
Yes, I mean, we all know that it's been a pretty difficult read, that book. The extracts that were published in the Mail have been very difficult. They've been lurid. They've been, quite sleazy. So imagine what it's like for his daughters. But by all accounts, they've done what they've got used to doing, which is ignoring it.
Well, how depressing is that? They've done what they've got used to doing.
They just have learnt over time. They've had so many scandals with their parents, and obviously recently with their father, that they have got used to just trying to do their best to ignore it and getting on with their own lives.
Rebecca, do you think there's any chance of them ever coming out and saying anything publicly, and particularly in support of their father?
I think it's unlikely. I mean, I've been told they deliberately haven't read the serialisation about this, and they won't be reading the book because I don't see what else they can do. I mean, it must be really difficult for children who have parents high profile who have behaved in the way that their parents have over the years, and I just don't think there's anything for them to achieve. They're just going to go out and get on with their lives, and I'm sure they're very supportive of them privately because children would be of their parents, but I just don't see there's anything that they could gain by doing that.
They've always been very supportive publicly of their mother. How do you think that relationship's going at the moment?
Well, they are still really supportive of her. And again, I know that Duchess of York has deliberately not read the serialisation and won't be reading the book either. I think she's been made aware of what she needs to be made aware of. But I think when it came to her largely, I think we discussed on the programme last week, while what we read about her was quite unedifying and not particularly complimentary, I don't think there was anything massively new there that would shock her children and think of her differently. So I think they're very, very close with their mother, and as always are going to be very supportive of her.
When you talk, Richard, about Beatrice and Eugenie just getting on with their lives, do you think they've made any kind of conscious decision? Do they need to distance themselves from their father to maintain their reputations at all?
Well, come on, I think one of the clearest things we've learned from this whole saga is that royals giving interviews, particularly television interviews, is a disaster generally. What happened to Prince Andrew, his career as a working royal ended after his interview with Emily Maitlis. He thought it was a great idea at the time, and others did too, because they thought he'd be able to sort of clear his name. In fact, it was a complete disaster. So I think certainly what his daughters have learned from that is much better to quietly get on with your job and what you do, rather than trying to sort of tackle these things head on. They know that storms pass. From the past, they know these things will, they can go back to normal. They can get on with their lives. But I think drawing attention to it or putting out statements or giving interviews probably isn't in their interest, and they know that.
I would just add to that, I think there's one notable thing in that feature by Sarah Rainey was that she pointed out they haven't publicly posted anything about their father for several years. I mean, Beatrice doesn't post very often anyway, but Eugenie's a fairly regular poster on, particularly on Instagram. And I think it was a good 4 or 5 years since her last reference to her father, whereas she's always referencing her sister and her mother, particularly on big anniversaries, where they do something that's, very publicly achieving, how proud she is of them. But Andrew has been all but wiped out from their public profiles.
Well, I guess inevitably that's going to invite trolling and all of those things. So,
yeah, and the point is, Eugenie in particular is very involved in setting up a charity to help traffic women, which is a particularly awkward subject when it comes to the allegations made against him by Virginia Giuffre. So you can imagine that's probably a road she doesn't really want to go down.
The most notable example we've seen was Princess Beatrice's wedding. Do you remember where the wedding photos didn't include the father of the bride?
Yeah.
So yes, they have made a point of that. But I mean, my goodness, you can understand it, can't you? I mean, it's bad enough with the sort of trolling you get anyway, but imagine if you were actually sort of publishing pictures of your father.
Speaking of charities for a second, Rebecca, wasn't Andrew going to be doing some charity work in this sort of like this rehabilitative new era?
Well, remember, Jo,
what has happened?
Well, yeah, a question I'd like an answer to as well, but although I have a contact number for his office, they never reply to any media inquiries, good or bad.
Really?
No, they don't. They've proper, head in the sand approach to all of this, which I
After
find
Newsnight,
quite remarkable.
Yeah.
But yeah, he made a virtue after that of saying he would be doing work in that sphere, and we've seen absolutely zero evidence of that. Maybe he's doing something behind the scenes, maybe I'm being unfair to him, but I would have thought he would want to make a virtue of that, and we have seen nothing.
So a quick reminder that if you want to have your say on whether or not Princesses Eugenie and Beatrice should take on more royal duties, then sign up to the Palace Confidential newsletter to vote in our poll. You can scan the QR code on your screen right now to do that, and it's all free. Now, the hits do keep on coming for Prince Andrew because, Rebecca, you wrote a recent story about a YouGov poll which spells more bad news for him.
Well, there were 2 polls, YouGov polls in recent days that refer to Andrew, and neither make good reading for him. When it comes to what they call their favourability tracker, he is the least popular member of the royal family. It won't surprise you to know.
Well, I mean, you're quite a relief. You'd be doing something wrong if you came beneath him.
And just 5% of the British population, they estimate, consider Andrew in a favourable light. I mean, I'd love to know what that 5% think is a redeeming factor of him at the moment. And also, actually...
Is that Lady Victoria Harvey just voting a million times? Is that what's going on there?
Yeah, there's probably a few mates' rates on there, aren't there? And also that 3/4 of the country believe he should now be stripped of all his remaining titles because, of course, although he can't use his HRH title, it's effectively in abeyance. It's still there in the background. He's still Duke of York. He has titles that refer to Scotland and Northern Ireland that were given to him on his marriage to Sarah Ferguson in 1986. He's still a Vice Admiral, and he's got various other titles, including Councillor of State, which I know Rich has strong opinions on, as I do, and various other kind of Commonwealth and foreign titles. And people are saying, no, it's about time he was publicly stripped of those as well.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, Richard, the official line will, of course, be they don't pay attention to polls. The governments say that as well. But Richard Kay alluded to last week that when there's some sort of notable blanket public disgruntlement, you need to pay attention to it, right?
I think you do. I mean, it's not healthy for the institution of the monarchy to have someone who is only liked by 5% of the population or something. That's very damaging. I mean, I presume the royal family hope that will change over time as he's less prominent. But still, it's not great.
It's a weight around their neck for definite.
But Richard, Andrew wasn't the only royal who came out not so well in this poll.
No, I mean, we talk about Andrew being so unpopular, but in fact, he's not much more unpopular than Harry and Meghan.
Wow.
And I would say that's much more notable because genuinely Prince Harry used to be by far the most popular member of the royal family. You know, everyone adored him. So to go from being, you know, the most popular to one of the least is a really shocking decline.
Second least, yeah. 20,
Yeah.
23, 24%, something like that.
Is that the kind of thing that will ruffle Harry, do you think, or not?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think he, you know, certainly wants to be loved, and we've seen that he wants to be coming back to Britain more. I think in the case of Meghan, she probably doesn't care less of what people think in this country, but I think Harry definitely does. So yes, that will really wound him.
But let's focus on King Charles for a second now. Rebecca, he had some quite split results, didn't he?
Yes, I thought this was definitely worth discussing because there's some interesting dynamics to this. So ostensibly, actually, it was good news. I think 6 out of 10 are very much in favour of the monarchy. 3/4 believe we're better off with the monarchy. Just I think a quarter or say that they're interested in a republic. You know, it's the kind of polling that a politician would probably give their eye teeth for, really. But where I thought it was interesting is when you look at the age factor of those that are being quizzed. And so you might have these kind of, you know, 6 out of 10, high 3/4 of people polled. But when you look at the division between young and old, if you're between 18 and 24, the favourability and the popularity of the royal family falls to about, you know, a quarter to a third of those polled. When you're looking at people older, 30, 40, up into their 60s, you're talking a kind of high 3/4 of people, high 2/3 of people.
This is just the same old story, isn't
it? It's a very generational difference. And of course, that on one hand, you could say, does that show that the monarchy is failing to cut through with the younger generation? And I think there's probably some truth to that. But also, were we all like that at one point? And will those younger generation then become an older generation that actually see the benefits of the monarchy? So it's an interesting dilemma for the royal family about how they approach this. And I was talking about this, God, my Sunday afternoons fly by if you come round to my house. But
well, if we were invited.
Oh, I know. Well, you will be one day. But I was talking about this with a friend over a coffee on Sunday, and they said, what you've been doing this week, and this is one of the things I was talking about. And actually, she said to me, actually, that is me. When I was younger, I would say I was probably pretty indifferent and maybe verging on do we need them. And now I'm older, she's the mother of 2 teenage children, she said, actually, I think they're a good part of our system of checks and balances in this country. I think it's great for tourism. I think it's good for, you know, Britain's, you know, the way it projects itself abroad. So while she wouldn't be one of the people who queue up for hours to stand in the mall and wave a flag, actually she would class herself as actually being in favour of the monarchy now. So, you know, could the younger people become one of those?
Maybe, but
we all turn into our parents, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe, but I think it's a mistake for the royal family if they think, oh, well, actually, as the population becomes older, they'll support us. I think,
yeah,
you know, you can't assume that.
And I think it's something they probably need to look at, and they clearly are in terms of upping their social media profile and how they reach out to people like that. We haven't got them on TikTok yet, but who knows? You might see them doing funny dances on TikTok.
That's probably going to be a George generation thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's something for them to take account of, definitely.
Well, there was some positive news, wasn't there? Some royals will be really pleased with these findings, weren't they, Richard?
Well, certainly the heir to the throne will be, because Prince William actually came top, which I was surprised by, really, because usually it's his wife Catherine who's the most popular. But in this particular opinion poll, William came out top. But certainly he and his wife are the most popular, which is great in the sense that that would suggest, you know, the monarchy's in safe hands if the heir to the throne and his wife, you know, retain the support of the population. And I think it's, you know, in some ways you might be surprised it's not the monarch himself and his wife, but, you know, William and Catherine are younger. There's obviously huge sympathy for Catherine after the sort of terrible year she's had. So I think generally it's a very good sign for the monarchy.
And actually, sorry to interrupt you, I was saying Princess Anne was third, so it shows you that older generation is represented there, that they appreciate that sense of duty. I know we'll probably discuss Anne later.
Can you remember when she was alive, did the Queen generally top these polls, or was it?
Yeah, she was very high up there, if you know, the top 1, 2 or 3, if not always first. I have to cast my mind back.
Yeah.
But, you know, and she was universally popular amongst different age groups as well.
Yeah.
I think because of the iconic figure and the iconic place she held in our national life.
Maybe King Charles should start wearing head-to-toe day-glow fluorescent colours. Maybe that might help.
I'll pass that on to the press office,
Well,
Joe,
I'm
and
sure they watch.
I'll
I'm sure
offer
they
your
watch.
feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem the King has is because of being Prince of Wales for so long, people have formed opinions about him. You know, he's given his views on so many subjects.
Yes.
You know, the Queen never did that. She became monarch, you know, much younger, obviously, and never gave her views.
She
and
was
I think
more enigmatic.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that definitely helped her in the long run.
Yeah. Let's move on, because last week's 2 shows looking at the claims made about Prince Andrew in Andrew Loney's biography of him stirred up a lot of comments among our viewers. I'm sure you're not surprised. We'll start with a couple of strong questions. Joe Vickers asks, the King can ask staff to remove Andrew and Harry and Meghan from the royal website. While they remain, they are classed to the world as working royals. The question is, why do they remain listed as working royals? I bet you're delighted I'm going to ask you this, Rebecca. What do you think?
It's a perennial question, isn't it? I mean, obviously they're not down there as working royals, but they're there because they remain members of the wider royal family. And I completely get the point that it gives them an authenticity that I think many people, and respectability that many people feel that they shouldn't have. Maybe credibility is a better word.
Authority.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, I've changed my tune on this slightly, because before I think I was, look, they're there, they're family members, what's the problem? Now I start to think it is becoming more of a problem as time goes on. There is no reason for them to have big personal listings on them. You don't have to wipe them out. You know, this is not expunging them from the royal history. You know, they can be there and mentioned in terms of senior members of royal family's biography. You know, King Charles has 2 sons. Queen Elizabeth had 4 children, one of which is Prince Andrew. But I have to say, I think it's one of these things that Buckingham Palace really don't want to poke the bear on this. They don't want to bite the bullet and just take them off completely. But I think it's going to come to the point where they probably have to. And it will cause a flurry of interest. We'll see stories all our publications. We will talk about it, yeah. And then, do you know what? Life will move on.
I suppose it's interesting, isn't it? The timing now, I think it probably would not be the done thing to be seen to be taking Andrew out of that, looking as the result of a book. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that would be weird, wouldn't it?
They would have to pick their timing, but I don't think there is any perfect timing for something like this. And I remember having a discussion with a previous senior member of the royal household after the whole Harry and Meghan debacle, when they obviously acrimoniously left the royal family, and they were deciding whether they should still wish them happy birthday publicly on social media. I mean, that's a debate that's still kind of going on slightly now. And the first year they did it, their attitude was that they chose not to do it as a habitual thing each year. They said, you know what, there will be a flurry of interest, but once we've done it, that's it. And this is not going to be a subject that's much discussed. Again, and I think they were probably right, and I think they need to do the same with this.
But remember that part of the reason that they remain up there is because it was seen as a temporary thing. You know, when they announced Prince Andrew was quitting everything, it was stepping back. It wasn't he's abandoning things forever.
Yeah.
So the idea was that he could come back. And the same with Prince Harry. You know, he's, they abandoned royal duties for some time, but they were trying to sort of leave the door open. So if they did just remove them, that would be such a final statement that they're not coming back. And that would be quite a dramatic step to take.
Should we all go down to Ladbrokes later and place our bets on when that might happen? Well, Kim Lundell, meanwhile, asks, the King and Prince Anne had a different upbringing in regards to parenting styles than Prince Andrew. That is well documented. In view of that, how do we explain Prince Edward's seeming ability to avoid the same sense of entitlement and arrogance? I'd love to hear your panel's thoughts on that. Richard, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think a lot of it just comes down to character, doesn't it? I mean, they're different people. And they married different people. I mean, Edward's always benefited from having Sophie as his wife, I think. But I think he, I certainly spoke to, very old friends of his who say he never really changed that much. He's not arrogant. He's always behaved in a positive way, and he's held on to these friends. And so I think a lot of it just does come down to character.
It is curious, isn't it, how siblings can grow up in the same family and all be different.
I think also
I mean, I'm the best one, for instance. I don't know about you. But,
well, I'm the oldest, so,
same,
you know.
Yeah, one of four and the best. Yeah.
But I also think there's probably an element of where you come in the pecking order, and, you know, as a younger child, so far away, removed away from the order of succession, there was never ever any possibility really, unless there was a major disaster, he would ever become king. So he's growing up with different pressures as well. And as Richard said, you know, it all comes down to personality and the people around you.
I think both Andrew and Harry, they do stand as a warning to Prince William and Catherine that how you treat that spare is very difficult, because, you know, we've seen in both cases that, you know, I would say they've grown up sort of with the wrong attitudes, you know, with that bitterness, resentment from Harry, and then in Andrew's case with that sort of weird entitlement, and you know, so I think from everything we've heard, William and Catherine are making real efforts to avoid that, but it is hard in that sense when sort of winner takes all type of thing.
It's an interesting study. Well, Martha Westerlund, meanwhile, had this to say, echoing our very own Richard Eden's thoughts. Remove Harry and Andrew from the line of succession, for goodness sake. I agree with all the comments. King Charles needs to take off his daddy hat and remember he wears the crown. Remove any threat to the monarchy immediately. P.S. By the way, I do love King Charles, but please step up. Love this show. Imagine saying to King Charles, for goodness sake, take them off the line of succession. But it's, you know, people do have that strength of feeling. We'll have more on Harry in a minute. Now to a comment from our Princess Anne special from earlier this week, and Helen Eaton, who writes, the best tale for me was Robert saying Princess Anne likes to skirt the keen people at garden parties and find the shy people. As a rather shy person myself, that fills my heart. I loved that as well. While Deanna Ruster says, best episode of Palace Confidential in my opinion, maybe because Princess Royal is my favourite royal. Not that you're biased or anything, Deanna. Now, a reminder that if you did miss that show, it's going to play straight after this one. And we're also about to film a Palace Q&A special. So if you have any burning questions for our royal experts, then please do comment below, and you two get ready to do your homework. Can't wait. Now, we still have a lot to talk about, so let's get back to my panel. And after all kinds of media speculation around Netflix renewing or not renewing their overall deal with Harry and Meghan, we did find out this week that there will be a new deal, but it's not as fancy as the previous one. No money up front, no obligation to produce anything the Sussexes come up with, and Netflix will see their ideas before anyone else. And basically, that's it. So, Rebecca, that's a little bit of a shine off the original deal, isn't it?
Depends who you talk to, because of course, like everything with the Sussexes, it's very divisive. And those that are their great supporters say this is a triumph. All of these media personalities were predicting that their deal was dead in the water, was going to be allowed to expire. We've got this renewed commitment from Netflix, this is a triumph. Those that do not like Harry and Meghan and are critics of them say, look, this is a massive downgrade from what they had before. It's a loosening of the ties from Netflix. How on earth can anyone claim this is a success story? And I think, as always, and it's my favourite phrase with the Sussexes, you pays your money, you takes your choice. With them, I have to say, I would like to give a shout out to our chief showbiz writer, Alison Boshoff, who actually wrote that this was going to happen a month ago. She's got very, very good contacts in the showbiz industry. And she said exactly that. It would be one of these first look deals. There would be a few kind of more forthcoming programmes. There would be a holiday special from Meghan on her With Love Meghan programme. And she got everything right. So I asked Alison what she thought, and she's somewhere in the middle of this. She said, yes, it's definitely not as good a deal as they had. That said, it's pretty par for the course given Netflix business model at the moment, that, you know, 5 years ago they were throwing around these big money deals like confetti. Harry and Meghan were clearly a great property to have, not necessarily because the programming they were going to deliver, but because of what they could get out of them in terms of their experiences with the royal family, which of course, as we know, is the only success story they've had in this programming. And she said what they've been given now is on par with people like the Obamas and their Higher Ground productions. They've all been given these kind of similar downgraded deals.
I'm sure people would point out the Meghan and Harry cheerleaders that With Love has been seen as a success of sorts?
Yeah, I mean, people.
I mean,
have been,
not the blockbuster that tell-all documentary was.
No, nothing would ever touch the sides of that.
Yeah.
So
and they've got
I mean,
a season 2, you know. So yeah.
And Alison explained to me that although people were making a point that it didn't even break into the top 300 of Netflix show, Netflix is such a kind of global success story that even being 340 or whatever it was is the kind of numbers that terrestrial TV would give their eye teeth for. But I do think it means that they are not on such solid ground in the future. And I think this second series of With Love Meghan is going to be the absolute clincher.
Yeah.
Will people stay with it? Because there were people like me and Richard who unfortunately had to watch it, the first series, multiple times for journalistic purposes. I imagine you've got a lot of people dipping in saying, well, you know, she's an interesting character.
You weren't moved to make a fruit platter?
No, funny enough, there have been no sprinkles on my children's
no floral
breakfast
sprinkles.
or packed lunches.
What about you,
let's see
Richard?
how it goes.
Well, unfortunately, we've been given the date for the broadcast of the second series now. So that date now looms large
When is it?
in my diary. It's in a couple of weeks' time. So
Okay.
we don't have to wait long to find out what new creations we can make in our own kitchens.
Exciting. So, but what do you think? Is this good news or bad news for Harry and Meghan, this Netflix deal?
Look, let's be honest here. Let's deal with the facts. I mean, Harry himself, in his interview with Oprah Winfrey, talked about how he needed money. He needed it quickly because security and money had been cut off from his father. So he said, we signed these deals with Spotify and Netflix, clearly implying that they were worth a fortune, which we know that they were. Well, this is none of the kind. From everything I've heard and everything Alison Boshoff has reported, it is just a first look deal. So the only money they will receive is if the programmes are commissioned. Now, I know that their spokesmen are playing this down and saying, oh, it's all good. And we know a couple of things. We know that there's going to be a Christmas special, or holiday special as they call it, of With Love Meghan. And there's also going to be a documentary about children in Uganda, which is a small thing. But that's all we know so far. And I think by all accounts, it is a big downgrade. And it remains to be seen, you know, how much money they make from it.
So a bit of a slap in the face, really.
It's definitely a slap in the face. I mean, what Harry would want would be another deal that he could, you know, boast to Oprah Winfrey about how much it's worth. But it's clear that that's not coming. I mean, look, if they're hard up, or if they find they're not selling enough jars of jam as they'd like,
Oh, they keep selling out. They're all right. Yeah.
that they could make another programme like Harry and Meghan,
Yes.
something personal, you know, something about Princess Diana or anything about the royal family, and I'm sure Netflix would snap that up.
But I guess if we are in this era where he wants more conciliation with the family, that's tricky for him to navigate.
But I think if he wants to make another series about Invictus, say, or about you know, his favourite sport, polo, I think you might find they'll say thanks, but no thanks.
Okay, well, more on Harry, because there were rumours this week that he wanted to found a new charity in the mould of his old charity, Centre Bali, which he recently exited in a swirl of controversy, I'm sure you all know. Now, while the Sussexes have denied these rumours, it does beg the question that if you can't be bothered fighting for the first charity you created, should you not just walk away from that space entirely? Richard, what do you think?
I'm very sceptical about these reports that Harry will want to create a new charity, because his problems with Centre Bali have shown, you know, how difficult that can be. I think they've kept things vague. I think it's clear that he wants to support, you know, projects in Africa, and I suspect they'll do that, sort of supporting specific projects rather than a whole new charity. You know, remember that he's patron of existing charities such as Well Child,
Yes.
the Halo Trust. So, you know, he can continue to work for those and Invictus. But starting a new charity in Africa, I just can't see it.
Well, with regards to the Invictus, Harry's other founded charity, it's coming to Birmingham in 2027. So do you think, Rebecca, he should just wait and see how that goes before starting anything else from scratch?
Well, 2027 is quite a long time away, so
We're nearly done with 2025.
But I think in terms of his frustration at wanting to do something, particularly in Lesotho and Botswana, I think he'll want to do something before then, but I've pretty much heard the same as Richard has, that, look, this only exploded last week, you know, it's still pretty new and pretty raw, and there's various options on the table. It takes a lot to set up a charity from scratch, particularly a charity that's going to be successful and effective. And I'm not sure there's the appetite for that at the moment.
And there would be so much scrutiny given the history of the Centre Bali and his profile, and so much weight of expectation.
Yeah, and it's a small country, and he'd almost be effectively setting it up against
in competition.
The charity that he originally set up, even though his departure's been in very acrimonious circles. That's not a good look, because then you're kind of splitting the vote and splitting support. So I think it's a question for him of wait and see.
And let's not forget, that's it's not his only problem with an African charity. There's also African parks that he was involved in that brought some serious controversy too. So I think he would be very wary.
Well, let's move on, because we discussed royals and their yacht holidays last week. In particular, we discussed William and Catherine. And then up pops Queen Camilla on a yacht. Richard, what can you tell us about this and the criticism that she received?
I've been receiving some weird stuff over social media about this. People saying, oh, look, you've got confused. It wasn't William and Catherine on a yacht. It was Queen Camilla.
There's only one yacht in the world. Did you not know that?
But I should be clear that both William and Catherine and their family and Queen Camilla have been on yachting holidays this summer, but separate yachts and separate places.
Okay.
In Queen Camilla's case, the newspaper, the Daily Mirror, which, to explain to our viewers, is a left-wing newspaper, was trying to create trouble by pointing out that the owner of the yacht that Camilla had this holiday on is Wafik Said, who is a donor to the Conservative Party.
Right.
But what should be said is, and obviously that they were saying creates problems because it looks like she's sort of siding with a Tory donor and that sort of thing. But we should say, Camilla has been friends with Wafik Said for decades. And in fact, Wafik Said has been a friend of the royal family in general, I think, with Queen Elizabeth for a long time. So I think certainly she wouldn't have seen it as being very controversial. But not many people own yachts. People that do own these big yachts obviously tend to be very rich.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know, call me naive, I can't get too bothered about it. No, she's had a nice holiday on someone's yacht. Good luck to her.
She was wearing a dress that I've got from Espiga.
Okay.
Ah, now that...
Fun fact. Yeah.
That is, I think I've got the blue one.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
Sustainable.
Yeah,
Sustainable
exactly.
brand is yin and yang of the yacht and the sustainable fashion.
The reason I said, there is an issue over the pictures, because, and we should explain that the Mirror also ran pictures of her on this yacht, and I think those are going to be the subject of a legal complaint.
Oh, really?
Because they feel that there is a reasonable expectation of privacy in terms of pictures as regards long lens photography and things like that. So that will be an expectation. I think there's an expectation that there isn't going to be a legal issue over those.
Okay, good to know. Well, as always, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, there was an emotional moment for Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, this week. Rebecca, what can you tell us about that?
Well, obviously this week, in the run-up to the 80th commemorations of VJ Day, Victory in Japan Day on Friday, which also heralded really the cessation of the Second World War, we are seeing a lot of events, and one of those, and it was really moving, the Duchess of Edinburgh went to visit 105-year-old ex-Marine James Jim Wren, who was probably more compos mentis at 105 than I am coming up to 55. So
no comment.
He was brilliant, and she was just listening. I mean, a remarkable character who survived his ship being torpedoed in the Far East, over 500 people killed, and he survived, and then he spent 3 years as a prisoner in a prisoner of war camp in Burma. And you could tell that she was incredibly moved by talking to him, and the kind of matter-of-fact way that generation has, talking about the most remarkable bravery and playing it down, and talking about how his wife didn't know whether he was alive or dead for 3 years. So really remarkable. We will be getting more of that. The King and the Queen are going to lead in the commemorations in the UK. The King has recorded a special audio message that we play to the nation on the morning of VJ Day, which is the 15th of August. So it's going to be a very moving occasion, and rightly so, our royal family at the forefront of that.
Indeed. Well, we will mark VJ Day more a little later in the show. Now, another big event coming up, not quite as globally important, but important for the royal family. Princess Anne turns 75 the day after we record this episode. Now, Rebecca, we got a new portrait, but we almost didn't we?
Yeah, I wrote a big feature for Saturday's Daily Mail ahead of Princess Anne's 75th, which I think you can still access online, and it's for free, and speaking to a lot of people who were close to her.
Great headline, that the Queen we never had.
Yes, exactly.
The best Queen we never had.
Yeah. Which was, there are some comments on that, people saying,
yes,
oh, that's disrespectful to the King. It's not, it's just people saying, if she had been in that position, what a remarkable monarch she would have made.
I'm sure Charles would agree.
She has resisted all attempts to mark this occasion, screaming and kicking. She wasn't going to pose for any official portraits, and the palace people were tearing their hair out, and then suddenly at the last minute she went, oh, okay. So they had
You've got 4 minutes.
Yeah, I think 4 minutes would have been a stretch. So Chris Jackson, who's Getty's official royal photographer, is a brilliant photographer and also has earned the trust of the royal family, was allowed to take a portrait of her just before the state visit, the French state visit at Windsor Castle. And her only rider, and I can't imagine Princess Anne having many riders, there won't be blue-coloured M&Ms or things like that, was that her husband, Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence, was in it with her.
Nice.
And it's a really lovely portrait, happy, smiling. And actually she liked it so much, she posed for another one, which viewers of Palace Confidential, we can't show it to you yet because it's embargoed, but it will be released on her birthday officially.
Oh, that's
exciting. And that
exciting.
was a portrait taken of her at Gatcombe Park, her Gloucestershire estate. So, you know, she liked it so much, she decided to do it again.
Well, I know that our legions of Anne fans will be looking out for that. Now, in your profile piece on Anne, you revealed more about her hair and beauty regime.
Well, I tried to really get to the nub of things that people were interested in. And there were some more serious anecdotes than this, but people always remark on how great she looks at 75, you know, considering how unfussy she is about her personal appearance. And I was speaking to friends who were saying, look, she's inherited many qualities from different parents, but one of the things she's inherited from the late Queen was her fantastic skin, which she does very little to, apart from not going out in the sun, and that's a lesson all of us can learn. I've learned, unfortunately, to my cost, that was not a good thing. You know, the idea of even lying on a sunbed is an anathema to her anyway, because why would she sit doing nothing when she could be doing something? She says out that she's got the Queen's genes, good genes for her skin, and she's perfected her own hair over the years. It takes her less than 15 minutes to do, often without even the help of a mirror. She can just do that trademark chignon in a couple of seconds without even looking. I know people who've seen her doing it in the field.
She's got really good long hair for a woman in her 70s.
She has, yeah. and actually her figure is the same, and they say she does watch what she eats, but not in a way of faddish diets. She's just, because of course she was an Olympian herself, she was an Olympic horsewoman, and she's just, I think, in the way that people who are professional sportsmen, you know, take pride in their physicality and their strength, and that's what does. So she doesn't eat a lot. She's like her brother. She doesn't.
Because she's always moving, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. She's you know, she's got a great physique. She does take a quiet pride that she can still wear the uniforms that she used to be able to, you know, military uniforms 40 years ago. And I might add, there was one other very funny anecdote someone mentioned to me in terms of her, just how gung-ho and how brave she is. And she was out, they were telling me, quite, dare I say it, a slightly long and slightly boring and waffly charitable function. And like a lot of us, and we've all been there, it was a very hot day, they said her eyes were slightly closed and they couldn't work out if she was asleep or awake. And suddenly, everything started shaking and people started screaming. Princess Anne, who was on the stage, didn't miss a beat. And without even opening her eyes, she just went, earthquake, and went back to her reverie. So they said she obviously clearly was aware and listening, didn't blink while everyone else is running around like headless chickens.
Now, Buckingham Palace did release a list of 75 facts to mark her 75th birthday this week, and it would be difficult to talk about all 75 in today's episode. So what I'm going to do is ask the panel to pick their favourite from the list. Now, Richard, what was your favourite fact?
Oh, there were so many great ones with Princess Anne. The one I liked, because actually it brought back memories for me, was she was the first member of the royal family to appear in a television quiz show.
I like that fact. Which quiz show was it?
It was Question of Sports, which is a great programme I always used to watch. Sadly, it's no longer with us. But I think she did pretty well from what I can recall.
Excellent. What about you, Rebecca?
Well, please, Joe, can I do two? Because Richard stole the one that I liked.
There's always
and
one.
I very
Go on
gallantly said he could still choose that one. But
Yeah.
there's two I wanted to. And because two that I didn't, well, one I knew, but one I didn't at all. And the one I didn't know was that in 1990, she was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for her work with Save the Children and other organisations, which I thought was pretty incredible. And the other is that she became the only member of the royal family, or at the time, to hold an HGV licence. And she has also driven a double-decker bus and a police car.
I did not know that she'd driven a double-decker bus, but somehow it just made sense when I read that.
Yes, and the HGV licence...
Yeah, what is an
I
HGV?
think heavy goods vehicle. Obviously now her daughter Zara actually got her HGV licence as well, so she could drive the big horse box that she takes when she's competing around the country and around Europe. But Princess Anne was the first person.
Oh, I could throw up thinking about the stress of parking one of those. No.
And if anyone could do it, Princess Anne could.
Well, indeed. And happy birthday to Anne, the Princess Royal, from all of us here at Palace Confidential, and we'll put a link to Rebecca's article in the description below. Now, that fanfare heralds the unsung royal hero of the week. Richard, you're doing the honours. Who have you got for us?
Well, I think it's good sometimes to remember the much younger members of the royal family. And in this case, it's Alexander Ogilvy. Now, he is a grandson of Princess Alexandra, who was a first cousin of Queen Elizabeth. And this week he passed out or graduated from...
I thought it was suddenly a very different story.
No, it's just the expression for graduating from the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, which is where other members of the royal family, such as Princess William and Harry, also passed out. And he has been enlisted to join the Household Cavalry. Very exciting. So, for example, at Trooping the Colour next year, perhaps we'll see him on parade rather than watching from Horse Guards. So,
very good.
Yeah, good luck to him.
And we rarely see Princess Alexandra anymore because of her age and her frailty, but she was there for the event, I believe.
She attended the passing out ceremony, so really good to see her.
They seem like a really close family, actually, and all get on really well. They're always quite, together at these big events.
Oh, well, look out for him. Well done. Good unsung hero. Now, commemorations for VJ Day have always included the royal family. So here are some of the most memorable from over the years. incredibly moving there. Well, a reminder to those who don't already, please do think about subscribing. That way you won't miss a very special episode that Rebecca and I recorded when we took a private trip inside a palace. Who do we think we are? You will not want to miss that, I can promise you. Now, up next, Robert Hardman tells me all about Princess Anne as she turns 75. You can click here for that. It's just time to say thank you now to Richard, Rebecca, and to you at home for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.